Hello, welcome back to PowerPoint Hell. My name is Kirb, and today I will be taking you through another data video. So this is for another 3-month block of data from November to February, so pretty much when Foundation released to Aether Drift. So there won't be any Aether Drift cards in this one. It's a month old. Yeah, I had a couple of problems, but that's fine. So yeah, covering 15 weeks. I think this is the most I've ever done in a data video, so yeah, there's a lot of data, so let's get straight into it. So, did anything new come out? So, we actually technically had 2 sets, which try and figure out what the second one is if it's not Aether Drift. So the first one was Foundations. Was there anything in Foundations? Crickets. Absolutely nothing. Oh, that's not much of a lie. Okay, there was a couple of things. So there was Heir Apparent and Dwynen's Elite. Heir Apparent was a meme. Everyone loves a good meme. Dwynen's Elite, people thought it might be good in Elves. It has seen a little play in Elves when it first released, and then not much because it doesn't really do a hell of a lot. Had Bushwhack, which saw a little bit of play in Gruul and then not again. And we had Crackling Cyclops, which has seen a little bit in Kiln Fiend or Blitz decks. Sometimes in the sideboard. It's pretty good, got a pretty good butt, but a little too slow. So really nothing from Foundations. What about Innistrad Remastered? Bet you forgot about that set. It technically brought us, I think, 3 things, but I've only put 2 on here. I put Essence Flux, which people talked about and then didn't really do anything with, and then Seize the Storm, which looks cool as a finisher, and it would have been cool a couple of years ago, but it just doesn't really do that much in this current format. I think the other one I was going to probably put was like it was Bramble Worm, which is like a worm you can exile from your graveyard and gain 5 life. I got a 5-0 and something, but it wasn't worth putting in here. So back to the question of did we get anything new? Not really. But maybe the meta changed anyway, because it's been 3 months. Maybe, sure, MH3 shook up the meta, but surely something's changed since then, right? So, last video, I had the big 5 of Pauper, right? So, we had Kuldotha, Broodscale, Affinity, Mono Blue Terra, and Gruul Ramp, right? So, is this still the same? No. We've lost 2 of them. We're down to 3. Pretty much, these 3 decks are currently dominating the online challenges, and yeah, let's look at the stats. So, here we have Kuldotha on top, still on top. Was on top last time. Affinity in second, but not technically. So if we combine both the Broodscale decks, I think it's 294, 298. So it's just slightly below Kuldotha. So Kuldotha and Broodscale are pretty much like tied for the top, and then Affinity's pretty close behind. And then we have the 2 blue decks of Fairies and Terra, a bit below. If you combine them, it's almost the same as Affinity, but this different enough that I wouldn't really call them the same deck, unlike the Broodscale decks. So yeah, Kuldotha's still winning. You can have a look at the rest, but that's what I really want to point out was like the new top 5, even though like it's separated enough that there's clearly a top 3. So changes from the last video to this video. I took like percentage of meta and then tried to figure out what the difference was. So Mono Blue Fairies has climbed like a decent amount compared to last time, and that's mainly because of Skura at Paupergeddon Pisa. Paupergeddon Roma? I commentated, I should know. Where he got top 4, I believe. And because there's only so many Mono Blue pilots out there, Mono Blue Terra took a little bit of a hit. So it dipped a little because, yeah, I think some of the pilots moved to Mono Blue Fae. It's still, like, got a decent percentage, though. Jund Wildfire is the next deck that's picked up a decent amount of steam, and I think it's just like the best mid-range thing. We'll talk about like sort of, you'll see in other matchups what it's good and bad against. It hasn't gotten enough percentage for me to talk about it in depth. Yeah, and I've pretty much called it because Gardens, it's the better Gardens, because Gardens has taken like Chrysalis and a pile of removal and just sort of have like that grindy control plan, which is pretty much what Jund Wildfire does, but it just has better cards. And there's a pile of cards decks down the bottom here that like Gruul, White Weenie, Familiars. They're all pretty average against Broodscale, who has slightly increased in meta share. So all these decks are getting slightly weeded out, which is a shame. So usually I talk about all the meta things, like all the matchups first, but I'm jumping straight into win percentages this time. So now you can see what's on top, which is Dimir Fae is currently above 55% win rate, which is quite amazing. So it's like it was in my very first data video, I called it the king. It's back to being the king. Even though no one really plays it, it seems to be winning. I think it might just be because of good pilots. And then we've got the double fog. It's technically Flickertron, people call it, but I've always called it Fogtron in my matchup, so the fact that double fog up here is pretty funny. I'm unsure how Fogtron is that high. Fog I understand because I play it a lot and it has like decent matchups, which we may get into, which you'll see when we talk about each of the higher deck matchup percentages. And then Golgari Broodscale sitting up top here at 55%. So there's always, I think 55 is the magic number. It might be higher, but if something has like a 55% win rate with a high percentage of meta, people start to get scared. 5%'s, or like almost 6%'s not that high currently, but I think people might start to worry if this gets higher and this still stays up. Terra's still high. Walls is also surprising to be there considering Affinity is still like the second most played deck, or third most played deck, I guess. And you can see like where the other main decks lie. So Affinity still slightly positive, Kuldotha still slightly positive. Jund's down here. Jund Broodscale is a bit interesting, how it's like so much worse than Golgari, which we'll probably get into at some point. And yeah, Poison Storm. I probably should have mentioned Poison Storm. It's pretty funny that it does have that positive win. I think it won one challenge, which really rocketed up the wins. Otherwise, yeah, it might not have done so well. Here's something interesting. So with the meta percent changes, I wanted to see, like, I did it with the win rate as well to see what had happened. This doesn't really teach us much. It's sort of weird. Like, you look Rakdos Madness up the top here. It increased by 3%, but it's still in a losing position. There's some things that have, like, down here that were, like, slightly positive down to slightly negative. But it's hard to tell with, like, the amount of data we had on these, what, like, if any of this really means. And, like, Walls and Elves down the bottom here, how they were good and now they're not. It just means they probably, like, hit the Affinity matchups more this run. Just the luck of the draw. The main thing I wanted to point out here is the increase in Golgari Broodscale. It has increased almost 5%. It was slightly negative. It was almost 50-50 against the field, and now it's at 55, which is quite a substantial increase over 3 months, considering how many games I've recorded. So, is Broodscale the problem? I mean, it's literally just 2 cards, and it could win on turn 3 in multiple different ways. How is this fair? How do we beat this? This is what most people are annoyed about, so we'll get into that one first, even though Kuldotha is technically the most played deck. We're going to talk about Glee first. So currently there are 3 versions of Broodscale, or Glee. So yeah, I keep interchanging between Glee and Broodscale, so apologies, but this will be Glee matchups, even though it should be Broodscale matchups, because Glee is shorter and it just fits easier at some point, so I'll use this term interchangeably. So there's currently 3 versions of Glee. We've got the old Wildfire one, which isn't seeing too much play these days, but it's because Jund Wildfire is almost this deck now, just without the Broodscale combo. We have BGR, as I've been calling it, which is Golgari Broodscale plus Chysalis, and almost no other red cards. And Golgari. So here's the win percentages for each of them, which was on the screen before. As you can see, well, you couldn't see that before because these were merged together. So for this, I've decided to split up the 2 Chrysalis-based Broodscale decks, just so you can see how they function against other decks, which I think is pretty cool. So, bang. Here is the matchups for each of these 3 versions. So, what they're good against and what they're bad against. I'll let you, like, you can pause this and see things, but I'm just going to go through a quick amount of them. So, because Golgari has the best win percentage, I sorted by that one. So, you can see non-interactive decks, it just beats, right? So, Poor White Weenie, it has a couple of 3-open charms and that's it. Turbo Fog has nothing, Hexbrick has nothing, Elves has nothing. Jund Broodscale also has nothing. It's just slower than Golgari, which is why Golgari Broodscale beats it all the time. And then, yeah, Gardens is too slow. I don't know. There's some sort of weird, like you can see Gardens was good against the Wildfire one because it was slower. And there's some sort of like mismatchups here, as you can sort of see. Like there's some more red over here. Izzet Control, you'd think would be good, which it is against the BGR one, but it's not good against Golgari. It's like, it's a pile of counterspells and spot removal, which is all you need to do to stop this, but it just cannot beat it. Because all it needs to do is duress you once, see what you got, and then use a couple of... Well, it has no clock. That's its main issue. Because if we look down the bottom, we will see what actually beats these decks. And you'll notice that they all have a common first word, right? Dimir, which I think is pretty funny. Terra wasn't that great against the Cleansing Wildfire sort of mid-range build, but it seems to be good against the other two. And then, like, Cycle Storm can outrace. I thought Dredge could outrace, which it does against the BGR one, but not against Golgari. Like, it's sort of 50-50 if you sort of, like, merge it across all of them. If you look at it against, like, the main two other decks of the big three, Kuldotha's, like, 50-50 if you go across the whole thing. Affinity, slightly bad against all of it. You could call it 50-50. It's sort of hard to tell with the amount of numbers. Like, yeah, it's like pretty bad against the Golgari one, but it's sort of 50-50 against the Jund one. Fae's pretty positive against both. I'm sort of ignoring the Cleansing Wildfire one because not many people have been playing this one recently. It's pretty much just been these two. And you can sort of see why, because of this just doesn't seem to win as much as these two. It's got tapped lands, it's slightly clunkier. These just have that put two cards together and win. So, for each of these, I'm going to have a nice little matchup summary, so it's just nice and easy to see. So, I called this roughly 50-50 for Broodscale against most of the heavy meta decks. It is slightly favored against Affinity, but I thought I'd just put it here anyway, because we'll talk about what it's actually good against and what it's bad against. But it's pretty much 50-50 against Terra and Kuldotha. It dominates decks with little to no interaction, so Turbo Fog, White Weenie, Gruul Ramp, sort of talked about that before. Its current weakness is Spellstutter Sprite and or Snuff Out. So if you've got both, then you're doing pretty well. Then you've got a decent chance against Broodscale, which is why all the Dimir decks were pretty high. Because you need a clock and you need interaction. If you've got... That's why Gardens was bad. Because, like, sure, it has Snuff Out, but it doesn't have too much of a clock. And then it can just sort of build up a pile of cards and then use 3 combat tricks, use 3 Duress and or Tameo Safekeeping to make sure their combo gets through. So I also did each of these individually, so the Golgari and the Jund as a whole, because I wanted to show, compared to 3 months ago, how everything changed. You can see here, there's pretty much one thing I want to point out here, and that's Kuldotha. So Kuldotha 3 months ago dominated Golgari Broodscale. And now it's slightly positive in Golgari's favor. So this is what's really swung that 49% like total win rate into the 55. It's just because of this one matchup. Sure, there's some other things as well. I don't know how it even there's not many matches here for me to like take this as gospel that these have improved. But like the deck's just gotten leaner, meaner, and angry. It actually gotten slightly worse against Fairies, Madness, Storm, Cycle Storm. That's just, they're all sort of like 50-50. It just depends if you're lucky enough to draw the combo or not against these sort of decks. But yeah, it's mainly because of Shambling Ghast. Shambling Ghast has made this deck very good, which Shambling Ghast was in some of the versions 3 months ago, but that's, once it was like fully adopted, it just like made red almost 50-50, if not slightly favorable. It's amazing what one card can do. So looking at the Jund matchups between last time and this time is a little bit more different compared to, say, Golgari, is because we're combining the two, like, Wildfire mid-range version and the BGR version. So it's sort of harder to tell, like, what deck's gotten better because, like, we've removed this card to a more Golgari version. So you can see, like, Affinity. Infinity was decently more favored, but now it's sort of 50-50. think it's because it has become less mid-range and it's more sort of focused on the Broodscale combo than getting that, like, incremental advantage that the old Wildfire one used to. Other than that, like, it's still pretty similar. The main reason I wanted to have both of these split apart is because of the next slide. Is Writhing Chrysalis actually worth it? So the way I did this is another weird percentage increase where I've written this wrong. So this is actually supposed to be win rate different percentage instead of metadiff. I just copied this from somewhere else. I probably should have fixed that before I started talking about the slide. But here we are. So remember what was down the bottom of Golgari Broodscale? Everything starting with Dimir. So it seems like adding Writhing Chrysalis does improve like your Dimir matchup, just probably the Snuff Out matchups in general, because you now have more threats that they can use the Snuff Outs on. So they're actually, yeah, so that you can play Writhing Chrysalis out and start beating them down with those, and then they have to use a Snuff Out, and then you can try and combo off. So that's what I believe the premise of Writhing Chrysalis to be, like why you'd actually want to pick it up. And you can see why you don't, because it's mainly speed. Like Hexproof, White Weenie, Red. Like there's not too much of a difference, so I guess Red is, but it's speed. So when you're adding Chrysalis, you're adding a game plan that makes you win in the long game, but then now you've got a 4-drop in your deck that doesn't really help you to win as quickly as Golgari does, like with Last Rites, for example. So is it worth it? Depends what you're up against, as to if you want to play Chrysalis or not. So the deck is mildly format warping. So there have been a pile of cards that have been trending up to deal with Glee. So if you're having issues against this deck, here are some cards that people have been playing that work against it, right? So Snuff Out, obviously. Free removal to stop the combo seems good. Coalition Honor Guard. Like Turbo Fog's been playing at main now, which is pretty funny. They can't put a Sadistic Glee on. So if you run main deck Coalition Honor Guard, if you're playing against Golgari, they're currently not running any like Snuff Out effects, so they can't actually kill this. Then they can't combo off at all. Duress, just getting rid of the Sadistic Glee from their hand helps. Finds a Vastwood. So green doesn't have too much interaction other than this and Ram Through, which Gruul Ramp has been playing Ram Through as well. Currently, mainly because of Glee, just to have some interaction. Vines is good because it protects your stuff and can target opposing Broodscales in response to a Glee to counter it, which is pretty handy. Nullify, which is a card I've never seen before until a couple of weeks ago. It counters either both Broodscale or Sadistic Glee, so it's pretty handy against that matchup in particular. And Seal of Doom, because they've been running Duress. So if you're piling up a pile of Snuff Outs in your hand to stop the Glee, they can just rip it out. So Seal of Doom's like a Snuff Out that's not only like cheaper dollar-wise, because not many people can afford Snuff Outs in paper because they're like $10 plus each. Seal of Doom's an alright replacement. You get to put into play, and then they know Duress is useless, so they just got to draw until they hit the Cameo safekeepings instead. So they just got to match the amount of safekeepings as the Seal of Doom's in play. And here's some cards that used to see play to stop Glee, but now aren't really very good. Trespasser's Curse. People have learned that you can just, like, you don't need to combo off on the turn you hit both Glee and Broodscale. You can put that in, like, make it go up big enough, and then just wait until you hit as Nadia's Nightblade. Nearly every version of the deck's running Nadia's Nightblade now, and if you do it on your opponent, so you can stack it, so because it's a death trigger, you can stack it and, yeah, not die to this. Unlike makeshift munitions that used to be. Hissing Iguana, same sort of thing. You can just stack the Nadia's Nightblade triggers so Hissing Iguana doesn't trigger anymore. Standard Bearer and Clark Clan Shaman, they're both here because Shambling Ghast is now a card, and both these have 1 toughness. All they have to do is play a Shambling Ghast, sack it to a Deadly Dispute, kill these, and then combo kill you off. So we're going with these cards, not these cards. You can still, like, Karkland Shaman's still fine an affinity for every other deck, but just don't rely heavily on these. Crypt Rats is the same, so just don't expect them to hate Glee as much as it did 3 months ago. Alright, on to Kuldotha. So here we go. Here's our most played deck at 50.87% win rate. We have Elves, can't deal with End the Festivities, which is pretty funny. Still beat Cycle Storm. Like, we just have a quick look at everything that it beat in the last video, it still does. It beats up Jund Wildfire, which it didn't before. I think they're still trying to... I think a lot of new people are on Jund Wildfire and don't know how to beat it. It also depends on... There's so many different versions, like ones with Pulse of Marasa or more just life gain in general might be better. Fae was bad, now it's good. Mainly due to End the Festivities being main. What's gotten worse? Yeah, the Broodscale matchup, which we've already talked about because of Shambling Ghast. Walls, there hasn't been enough data, so it's sort of 50-50 still. Just depends if you can... Depends if they hit a turn 2 Overgrown Battlements or not. Otherwise, it's red, you know what it does. It's roughly 50-50 against Broodscale and Affinity. It's good against Snuff Out. So, if you noticed before, a lot of the black decks were up high because they run Snuff Out to beat Broodscale, but they can't really afford to pay 4 life against the burn deck. It's also good against non-interactive, well, non-Glee combo, which I've got Cycle Storm, and whatever other combo decks which don't exist currently because Glee has punched them out because it's just faster. And slow decks, like Gruul Ramp, even though it's not technically slow, it still is too slow for red. What's red bad against, you might think? Well, it's the same things it's still bad against, which is Fogs, which I've got, so Turbo Fog and White Weenie, Sweepers, so Breath Weapon, Arms of Adar, stuff like that, and repeatable life gain, so Armadillo Cloak and Unexpected Fangs, which I believe Dimir Fae is slightly favored against this too. That's red. And now I want to talk about what the deck has been changing to try to fix some of its worse matchups. Some of the versions have been running Kessig Flamebringer and Ren's Resolve instead of one of the 1-drops and like the 2 End the Festivities. This fixes 2 of the weaknesses, which is the Sweepers, because Kessig Flamebringer is a 1-3, so it doesn't die to the majority of the Sweepers, and the damage prevention effects, so Prismatic Strands and Fog, just because being able to keep pinging them for 1 is very good against those sort of decks. And Gidu Lava Runner has come back. Instead of Reckless Lackey, they've swapped it out for. It's been doing pretty well in challenges as of late, and I think it's just there to be more explosive. More 1-mana 2/2s is, with haste is what the deck wants, because, yeah, Goblin Tomb Raider is a heck of a card. Affinity. It has a 51.9% win rate. It's good against a lot of things. It's very mid-rangey, like, it's good against... It's good at grinding things out, so all the Dimir decks that were good against the Broodscale decks lose to Affinity just because it can outgrind them. Then with Ephemerate, same with Gardens, Elves and Walls. Walls doesn't even register here. Didn't have enough games, but they lose to just Karkland Shaman straight away. And it's good against Fae, which is pretty good considering it was pretty bad against it like 3 months ago. Well, there wasn't that many matchups, but I think just having Refurbished Familiar is very good for this deck. White Weenie, it's gotten better at White Weenie. I mean, it pretty much just relies on if White Weenie can draw like multiple Dust to Dusts and kill them. It's 50-50. Look at, like, there's 200 matches, and it's pretty much 50-50 against red, which I think is hilarious. Like, it used to be favored, but I think just the amount of 2/2s that it gets, just the speed is hard for Affinity to deal with. Sure, it's got 4 Reckoner's Bargain to try to deal with red, but even that, it still seems to manage to lose, well, some of the time. You'd think it'd be more in Affinity's favor just because of Reckless Bargain, but, I mean, there's only 4 of them, they can't draw them all the time, right? Or multiple, anyway. And here's the other main thing that makes Jund Wildfire favorable these days, is because it just outgrinds Affinity. It's got sort of the same... It's got the same deck idea. It just draws a pile of cards. It's just that it runs Chysalis, and Affinity runs Mirror Enforcer, and Chysalis beats Mirror Enforcer. It's pretty much simple explanation as to why this matchup's sort of so lopsided. And it's pretty bad against Turbo Fog, which is why I keep playing the deck, because I think that's fun to verse into Affinity. So, summary for Affinity. Matchup is roughly 50-50 against the other two big three. Is slightly bad against Broodscale, but I just wanted to show that these sort of three decks are roughly equal against each other. It's great against blue because of all the draw twos, as you saw with all those like 3 Dimir decks right next to each other in the positive matchups for Affinity. You can counterspell one draw spell, but then they'll just draw more than you anyway, and then you just get left in the dust from card advantage. And it's also good against Elves and Walls, mainly just due to Color Clan Shaman. So its current weaknesses is Mono Blue Terror, which it was, its win rate was pretty bad against, and it's mainly just because it runs a pile of sideboard hate, like 3 0 for Steel Sabotage, and it's also bad against the grindier decks. So Turbo Fog can outlive whatever Affinity wants to do, and Jund Wildfire, Chysalis is bigger than Mirror Enforcer and draws just as many cards. So what has Affinity been changing to try to deal with its weaknesses? Hunter's Blowguns. This is a Luffy innovation. It's been running 2 to 3 in different lists as a Toxin Analysis replacement. So why is this better than Toxin Analysis? Well, it counts towards your Affinity count. It gives your creature +1/+1, which is mildly relevant with Clan Shaman, because it lets you keep the Clan Shaman alive on your opponent's turn, because it has Death Touch on your turn, so that's why it's the Toxin Analysis replacement. So on your turn, you can just equip, sack something, and then Death Touch everything. Or you keep it alive, and on their turn, you can sweep for 1, and then the Clan Shaman lives, because on their turn, it has Reach, which is also pretty good against Fairies, which has been increasing in metashare, so having another way to block Fairies is pretty handy. Also, putting it on your Mirror Enforcer to make it a 5/5 so it doesn't die to Galvanic Blast is also pretty good. And trade with Terrors. And it's also running Nihil Spellbomb for the grindy matchups, because it's bad against... It's you want advantage in the mirror because Affinity is so prevalent, so being able to shut off Blood Fountains is pretty good. Also helps like slow down Terror, which is one of your bad matchups, and like Dredge was also a bad matchup for Affinity for some reason, even though it's been running 2 to 3 Nihil Spellbombs, but running more into Spellbombs surely will make that matchup better. Blue Fae, the new kid on the block that wasn't in the previous video. So, it's slightly below 50%, but we'll call it 50%. Round it up. We're nice here. So, it is picking on me poor boy Turbo Fog. It's mainly here because of, you see both Broodscale decks here, it is positive against both of them. That's why it's climbed up so much, is because people are trying to beat Broodscale. But the only problem is that it's slightly bad against the other two. So Affinity and Kuldotha, like, it's fine against them, but it is still slightly below what you would want to be called favored. Even though 3 months ago it was, but that's just because we had a much smaller data set. Has issues against In the Festivities, and Fixed Affinity has flying blockers and Hunter's Blowgun now, plus like Breath Weapon in the sideboard to try to deal with Fae. Being able to pick on like the decks that no one seems to like, and also like Terra, which is the other blue deck. The fact that it beats up on that also means that Terra is sort of slipping off in popularity just because it's been climbing. Because it has issues with dealing with things quickly. Fairies does do things pretty quickly if it gets the right cards. So, matchup summary. Spell Stutter is great against Broodscale. Yeah, it's the main reason why we're playing against Fairies. And it's also good against decks with no removal, which is why it was good against Turbo Fog. It's good against Terra, and good against like Cycle Storm and whatnot as well, because having ninjas draw you cards every turn is pretty decent. It struggles against decks with multiple creatures with reach. So I've got Nyx 100 here because Gruul Ramp has like this, the Dino if they still play it, Writhing Chrysalis. It also has issues against Jund Wildfire because it runs the Hydra plus Chrysalis as well. It's terrible against White Weenie. I didn't talk about it, but it was like they had 1 win out of 11 matches, which is pretty funny. Bad against In the Festivities and bad against Suffocating Fumes. So like Dimir Fae is better in the pseudo mirror against Mono Blue Fae. Onto Blue Terra. Blue Terra has a 53.91 win rate. Pretty positive. Still good against Hexproof. The fact that it's like raised against Gruul is rather funny. I think this is because Gruul has now shifted from the Cascade version. So instead of running Boarding Party and Altasaur, they don't run either of them anymore. They just run Bannerhide, Crew Shock, and not even sure what the other card they run is instead of the Dino. But the fact that they're not casting 2 spells anymore means you can just counter the one big thing and they can't really do anything about it. So I think that's why that's improved. White Weenie's sort of 50-50. It just depends on, like, the pilots may have improved, because I know how to play this at White Weenie. You just need to resolve creatures with flying and then block on the ground. That's what's happened there. The deck hasn't changed for this to change. Affinity favored because Terra's big. Broodscale's sort of 50-50. The Jund version is favored because it's slower, so you can use your counter spells better. Golgari, it's just, yeah, dice rolls to who's quicker. You've got pressure, so at least you can try to like ramp out a big boy really quickly and just try to beat them down. We're bad against fairies, Dredge, which I think is pretty funny. Elves, it's always been bad against elves. And Cycle Storm, which you'd think would be bad against any blue deck, but this one doesn't run enough counter spells for Cycle Storm to have too many issues. Probably favored in Kuldotha, which, I mean, it tracks from last time. This must be the amount of Hydras in the board, I guess. So, matchup summary for Terra. Has a quick clock and counter spells for Glee, so that's why Jund is up. It's 50-50 against Golgari, but we'll call it overall for Jund, or overall for Broodscale in general. Yeah, and its creatures are bigger than Mirror Enforcer, so that's why, yeah, you'd want to run Terra because it's good against like 2 of the big 3. And it struggles against decks that play multiple must-answer spells early, is the very vague definition I've given as to what Terra's weak against, which is fairies, because it plays a lot of 1-drops, and ninjas. Ninjas are the main issue because there's a repeatable card draw, so it gets them out early. Elves, always had issue with elves because it can just drop so many things before any like counterspell or creature hits play. And Dredge can usually find a point where it can cast like 3 lethal Dread returns in 1 turn, which Terra just can't handle with its playset of counterspells and like 3 spell pierce, and that's it. So that's the big 5. What about the rest? What is the best of the rest? Well, here's the other blue decks that were near the top of the thing. We have Dimir Terra, have Izzet Control, and we have Dimir Fairies. It's hard to find a unique card in Dimir Fairies that isn't part of Mono Blue Fairies. I really like Occupy Gang Shinobi. So Dimir Terra, not doing too great, 46.8%. It is very good against Golgari Broodscale for the amount of matches I've gotten, which is pretty funny. The only problem is that you look at the amount of green, there is not much green in this month. It had a lot more green in the previous video, but not this time. It seems to have issues against everything else. Like, well, it's okay against Kuldotha because it has large repeatable life gain in the form of Unexpected Fangs. 50-50 against Terra because it's the same sort of deck, even though it's sort of clunkier, which is why it was worse before. But yeah, bad against, well, it's sort of 50-50, it's only one thing. So bad against Affinity, because Affinity just outgrinds you. It can just sweep your board away. Bad against Gruul, because Gruul just punches out so many things that you can only stop like 1 or 2 with a snuff out and then still die. But it's mainly just this weakness to Affinity that's dragging Terra down. Izzet Control, another deck where, like, closer to 50%, but there's still a lot more red than there is green against, like, the top 18 meta decks. So, great against fairies. So, there's a lot of fairies. You can, even last time, it was great against fairies. So, there's a lot of fairies in your area. Pick up Izzet Control. It's also alright against Affinity, which it wasn't before, which I find interesting. It must just be a combination of a lot of cast into the fire. And counterspells must get Izzet there somehow. Sort of 50-50 against Kuldotha. it was a heck of a lot better. This was the deck you used to run if you wanted to beat red. Now it's sort of 50-50, but it's mainly just, I think, because you can just grind out really well with red these days, especially with Clockwork Percussionist. And you just got to find the right time to be able to... Yeah, they don't have any life gain, so if they don't get the sweeper at the right time, they are just dead. But yeah, it used to be good against Golgari Broodscale. It no longer is. I think people have just learned how to play the deck, and having your removal spells cost red, and you don't have too much red mana, so you need multiple red mana. And yeah, Snuff Ad is king. Snuff Ad is better than Lightning Bolt, confirmed. Mere Fairies, 57% win rate. I had to put this in there because this is... Look at all this green. It is currently the best performing deck in my recording of data. Although it didn't have... Yeah, it's still like sort of underplayed. It was not played at all really in the previous video, but it's getting a lot of play now. And you can see, like, it's good against everything. It's good against Kuldotha, it's good against Broodscale, it's good against, like, literally everything else. Its main problem is that it cannot beat Affinity. And Affinity is a third of the meta, so yeah. I think it's because it's a small sample size, and poor Dimir Terror wishes it had that much green. I think it's a small sample size, and also the fact that the pilots, like, it's only over 3 pilots, I believe. Like, it's Knight of Shanton, CC Ogre, and Bath, and Out Zero. There's probably some more. Baco might also be on at some points. But they're all, like, names that are very good in this shell, and when you're a good pilot, you know how to bring the best out of your cards. And I think that might be what this is, rather than the deck being good, but it's kind of hard to ignore currently. So more best of the rest, right? We've still got some more decks that you've seen in this list that could be in there. And we're going to call this the Kirb bracket. So these are all the decks that I like to play. So we got Turbo Fog, Dredge, and White Weenie. These are the decks that people come to my channel for to watch. But, oops, sorry, I misread something here. We don't have Turbo Fog, sorry. It's going to have to be Gruul Ramp. So it's not technically the Kirb bracket, but we almost got there. So Gruul Ramp. The poor Gruul Ramp. It used to be in the big 5. Now it's not even almost... I almost did not put it in this video. You can see, like, the amount of matches that it had to what it has now. Like, it's half, if not less. So, yeah, it was like 50%, I think, before. It's now at 46.5. It is not doing too great. And that is mainly because of this one lizard boy. So you can see Golgari down here. Sure, like, it doesn't play against it that much, and it's only slightly below, but it just has not got a great matchup against Broodscale. Like, it's always been mid against Turbo Fog, Jund Wildfire, because, well, yeah, and also Krark Clan Shaman, right? Krark Clan Shaman, yeah, look, used to be good against Rakdos Affinity until Grixis Affinity found Toxin Analysis and now Hunter's Blowgun, which made this matchup just miserable and, yeah, not great. So that's the main reason why Gruul Ramp is where it is, because it had 2 good matchups, and now it doesn't. Dredge. Everyone loves Dredge. It's got 51.44%. It's seen a lot of pickup. Like, look at how little it had. Now, like, there's 3 to 4 pilots that play it semi-regularly. I know Galileo and Lolo Polo do, which are in Marzaboy. So there's 3 pilots that I know off the top of my head that almost play Dredge every challenge. Still has issues with Graveyard Hate, obviously, but it's doing pretty well. I don't really know what to really say about it. There's not, like, too much data on it. I think, like, most of these are probably 50-50, even though they're, like, slightly positive. Like, you'd think Kuldotha should be positive-ish because it runs main deck Nord of the Bone, but sometimes you don't hit it early enough, sometimes, and then post-board they've got 4 relics, so I think it's the post-board issues against Kuldotha that's the problem. Yeah, Fairies also picking up hasn't been great for the deck because counterspell, cheap counterspells that are repeatable on your threats, like you're trying to rely on a Dread Return, is not that fantastic when they just keep beating you down in the air with your little 1/1s on the ground, not being able to stop them. White Weenie, one of my personal favorites at 49.83. It is here to utterly beat up Fae. Like, it sure it had a 50-50 before, and I always think this matchup's like very positive in White Weenie's favor. There are some people that just there's some mono blue pilots that think that White Weenie is like very favorable for fairies, but I've never seen that be true, so I'm not entirely sure what dream world they're living in. Yeah, Jump Wildfire's too low to worry about. A lot of 50-50. So, like, White Weenie was here mainly to beat up Affinity, which it was good against. Now it's not. They've just learnt how to play around Dust to Dust. And also against Red. Still good against Red. This is the main reason why you play it, because it's great against Red and it's good against Fairies. So if these two decks are up a lot, play Mono White, it's good time. If Broodscale is everywhere, then yeah, maybe don't bring White Weenie because it only has 4th Raven Charms game 1, and then yeah, it doesn't really do too fantastic game 2. Here's a matchup matrix for you. So I did these on one of my previous videos where I showed sort of what beat what, and it's pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool, and I've missed it a couple of times, and I wanted to bring it back just to show you like all the decks I just shown and how they match up against the current like meta decks. So here's your big 3. Kuldotha, Affinity, Broodscale, right? So he's yellow for slightly favored. So Broodscale's slightly favored against Affinity. Otherwise, these are all sort of 50-50, so I'm not going to put any arrows anywhere. So we have Mono Blue Fairies. Mono Blue Fairies, very good against Broodscale. Red's pretty good against it, like slightly favored. Then on to Terra. So Terra slightly beats Mono Red. Very good against Affinity because of all the 5/5s. But Mono Blue Fae beats up on all the flyers fly over all these poor serpents. Dimir Terra. Dimir Terra, very good against... So anything with Dimir is good against Broodscale currently. But anything that is Dimir is pretty bad against Affinity. And I probably should have put a slightly favored there, but I did miss that. So Dimir is slightly favored against Kuldotha. And we have Dimir Fairies. Very good against Broodscale. Very bad against Affinity. Pretty good against Kuldotha, mainly just because of the Spell Stutters plus Suffocating Fumes. Also slightly good against Mono Blue Terra, just for interaction plus flyers. And very good against Dimir Terra. White Weenie. We put it over here because obviously it's good against Red. But it is shocking against Broodscale. Very good against Mono Blue Fae. And was sort of like 50-50 against everything else. On Dredge. Dredge is very good against Mono Blue because of all the multiple... Or Mono Blue Terra because of casting multiple spells in one turn. Slightly good against Affinity, which I still don't understand how, but the data tells me this is what is currently happening. Very bad against Red. They just go too quick. Bad against Fairies. Got too many flyers plus counter spells. Gruul Ramp. Very good against Dimir Terra. Just get too many things out too quickly. Same with Mono Blue Fairies. Or too many reach creatures. It's very bad against Broodscale, though. Very bad against Affinity because of Toxin Analysis. Or Death Touch Sweeper. Let's go with that. And also pretty bad against Red just because they go too fast. And then Izzet Scred. Great against Fairies. Pretty much the only reason you want to play the deck. Well, and it also is pretty decent against Affinity somehow. And very bad against Broodscale. So I hope you like this nest of arrows. I hope this all makes sense to you. That's all the matchup data. How do we end this? Well, the one thing I want to just know is the meta diverse? Sure, there's the big 3 and there's other decks, but is the meta actually diverse? I asked this in one of my tweets where I post the meta of each of the challenges, because every single time there's like different... you cannot predict what's going on. Every time there's different decks in the top 8. Like there was 2 Elf pilots in this one after Elves being almost non-existent for a couple of weeks. It's very hard to predict what's going to appear each challenge. Is the meta actually diverse? And I got a great reply. So from Bosch Fred, they said, I really think that being Pauper is a low stakes format, there are a lot of people that choose to play what's fun and decent instead of what is the strongest. Which, to be honest, probably rings pretty true. People will just play what they think is fun. In challenges specifically, it's only 6 rounds on the weekend. I don't think there'll be some people that are playing it for. Well, everyone's trying to win, obviously. That's why you're playing in the challenge. But you're not driving there and like there's not that much cost on Magic Online to be able. You can just play what you like, and people will play what they want to be good. They want to show off that a deck can be good and like have it post instead of just like slamming Broodscale because they think it's the best deck. Some people will do that, obviously, especially the multi-format grinders, but I think, and most of the Pauper people you see are the same ones. So I think a lot of people just play the challenges and play what deck they like to play. But the real other question is this meta actually fun? Which is a question I can't actually answer because fun is subjective. So there's a lot of people that have been complaining that yes, the meta is diverse, and people like, and everyone will play whatever they like. But is it fun if you're playing against Broodscale or if you're playing against Affinity when you're mono blue Fae? Like, do you enjoy this? I don't know. And that's something I can't answer. Especially because you don't want to trust someone whose version of fun is this. And that is all I have to say. So anyway, I want to thank the people who use this data, like the ones I put out, the like data I put out in my spreadsheets on a like daily basis on the weekends. We got Carly Kais talks about it in his Decks of the Week video. Casting Commons talks about it every week. Potestus makes videos, but also has a website that I will link to, which shows all the data just in a nicer form rather than looking through a pile of spreadsheets. And Poida, or Pavel, I really have no idea how to pronounce your name, I'm sorry. They have made, like, this is only like 2 weeks old, if that. They've made a website which is more focused on the players, I believe, than the meta that I talk about, which is pretty cool. So, you can check them out. You can check out Twitter. I now have a Blue Sky. If you're not a big fan of X, I post a wrap up of each of the challenges. Here's one I did for the Pauper qualifier, which this was in Aether Drift, so I didn't get to put this in part of the video. Yeah, and just a regular Friday challenge. And I pretty much just only post those. Sometimes I'll post a deck that I've top 8'd with, but that's only happened once this year, so I didn't feel like putting that in. Ko-fi, you can find videos. So from my video of looking over my 2024 videos, I did mention that I was going to put videos on my Ko-fi that I did not think were worth putting on my main channel. So I've put one up there like semi-recently where I went through a challenge with the Celestial Initiative deck. I didn't think it was good enough to put on the main channel. It probably is. I just don't know what's good and what's not anymore, to be honest. So check out there. I don't charge anything for anything, so it's just another way. It just doesn't clog up my YouTube feed, that's all, with videos I'm not happy with, I guess. Big thanks to these 4 people: Don D, Void, Dolo Me 10, and Matty VH. They've all contributed to my Ko-fi at some point. I think all of them might have been between the last Darty video and this one. Not sure, but thanks anyway. Everything's appreciated. I don't know why people keep giving me money. And thank you for watching. I had a hopefully this has been late. I apologize for this one being like a month late. Sometimes this feels like a school assignment where I've just been lying on the floor going, I have no idea what to write. I have no idea what to put in this slide. So it's taken a bit longer than usual. And it's sort of been the same as what it is, but I switched it up a little. I think it's a little nicer. So I hope you enjoyed. Here's my 2 little mascots to say goodbye, and I hope you had a good time. Leave a comment if you think I missed something. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one.